I'd love for you to expand and enlighten me a little bit more around some of the farm fish, because
Sure.
I think I associate a lot of farm fish as not actually having a good balance of omega-3, seeing a lot more omega-6 and 9 depending on the feed,
Exactly.
a lot more GMO ingredients in that feed, and then we often hear about the high use of antibiotics. So I wanted to know, in your systems, you
Yeah,
said
sure.
almost zero inputs. So yeah.
So when I look at fish, the primary variable to couple and think about with aquaponics is temperature. You got to look at your crop, if it's cannabis or if it's lettuce or if it's wasabi. You got to look at that crop and figure out what temperature does that crop need, because most people are focusing on the crops for their income. So we want to optimize crop production. We want the right temperature of water. So that's the factor. 74 degrees, right? That's when I'm going to grow cannabis or many of my tomatoes and cucumbers. So that really, if I want a commodity, I'm at 74 degrees. Now I just got to look at what's available at 74 degrees, from tilapia to catfish to koi to all these fish that we just mentioned. The salmon are colder, so it's really hard to couple salmon with plants because of that temperature. If you want to do salmon, you're going to decouple. You're going to warm up that nutrient solution and feed those plants. When it comes to the quality of your fish, you're right. You are what you eat. My fish don't have microplastics. Every fish that you're buying wild is full of, they come with their own plastic, their plastic bag. It's inside. So I could just start there and, we could talk about that. But then I look at my diets. Some diets will have GMO corn and soy and some don't. So you make that judgment on economics as well. I pay a little bit more for a diet that doesn't have GMO ingredients, but that's becoming harder and harder to find. I've also grown these fish since GMO ingredients in fish feed came out 20 years ago, probably. My fish perform extremely well on these diets, including GMO diets. I'm not 100% against GMO. My fish are healthy, 100% survivability. My feed conversion ratio is extremely low. So I'm not totally against that, but for a marketing reason, I'm going to look for a diet that may not have GMOs. Antibiotics are not used in the U.S. aquaculture industry. If we wanted to, we would have to go to a vet to get a special license, special use on that chemical. Then we can't feed it to a food fish unless we withdraw that for 120 days. Honestly, when it comes to treating fish, fish farmers don't treat their fish because they never get disease. We do everything on the front end to never.
Shit, he froze.
Froze. Did I freeze it?
You're okay now. Go ahead.
Not sure exactly where I dropped, but you are what you eat. So thinking about what you put in those diets, thinking about your water source is extremely important to look at the quality, to your final quality of your fish. So some people have wells in this area full of uranium, right? We really have to look at what we're doing. I'm going to talk, if we have time, about a grant I've got coming up in Navajo Nation, because I'll go ahead and just kind of veer into that a little bit here, is we're talking about soil matters. So I just put in a grant with Navajo Technical University, and I was wondering why they're looking at hydroponics. The reason is they are building on a NEFA grant that they just completed that analyzed all the soil in their region and just showed the extreme levels of uranium toxicity in the soils. So how are we going to grow food? Where soil matters, and Leighton's going to spend 10 years building soil in Navajo community to eat up that uranium, maybe with fungi. It's a long process, right, to reclaim tracts of soil like that. So they want to go into hydroponic and aquaponic production because this is container farming. So this has the ability to be the safest food possible if you do things right. And again, when I see these stories about everything that we flush down our toilet, every chemical ends up back in our system. Your sewage treatment plants go through a microbial remineralization process. They're breaking down the nutrients, but they're releasing it with all the chemicals still intact, all your estrogens, all your opioids. So again, I can defend fish farms all day long, but the consumer really has to open their eyes to wild fish and what they're eating. I saw this in 1988 when that medical waste washed up on the Atlantic City seashore. That was my light bulb moment in my career. And that was the first time we saw that. Now every beach is littered. There's medical waste everywhere, and that's your wild fish. So I kind of leave it to you to decide. Omega-3s, omega-6s, that's about the fish itself. A tilapia is an omnivore, almost a vegetarian, so it's going to be inverted, more omega-6s. And that's also because of the diet. It's a plant-based diet. Where omega-3s, those heart-healthy fatty acids, EPAs, DHAs come from, it's not from ocean fish. It's from ocean fish that eat algae. So we focus on algae production here. We have algae in our beds. I've often grown green water tilapia tanks, and now my tilapia probably have higher omega-3s than a typical tilapia. But those are really good questions, to start thinking about. And if you're thinking about the impact of eating fish, you really do need to think about wild fish and what you're putting in your body every day. And if we do that weekly, that accumulates. It's bioaccumulation in our bodies. So, I'm pretty strict on the consumption of my meats to controlled environments.